All right, good evening. It's 5:03 PM. We will call the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission meeting on February 1st, 2024 to order. We have two commission members here, and so Councilmember Fraley will be voting for a quorum. First item number 2 is approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda for January.
I'll second the motion.
Sherry and Alyssa, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of the January 4th, 2024 minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
So,
And I'll second it.
Sherry, all in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Motion passes. Open forum. Seeing none, we'll carry on to department reports. Last month we talked about flooding the hockey rink. This month we're gonna talk about that it's closed. So we were open for 13 days this season. Within that, we tallied 369 users with $152 in concession sales. So, well, it was small, it was mighty. But with that, the pond hockey season has been canceled. Information went out to players. They were offered a refund or the option of donating their registration fee just because we didn't even get a single game in. So basketball still has a couple more weeks. That ends February 15th. And then also in February, I send out our annual advertising and sponsorship letters. Most businesses that are on a 3-year cycle with our baseball field banners, they are due for renewal this year. So this might be a larger renewal than we've seen in the past couple of years. But from my end, the 3-year sponsorship has been a pretty good option in terms of tracking and just response from the business community. Gull Lake Trail, wanted to let you know we did receive one concern regarding someone plowing the trail with an ATV, so that has been addressed with that person. And then in January, City Council did approve Pratt for work at Camp Lincoln, as well as the quote for the toilet. And so they've all been contacted regarding that. We do not have a timeline or a date set for work, but Pratt is looking at kind of doing some tree removal here in the winter-ish months into spring. And so we will continue to update you guys on that one as far as when we get a timeline set. One thing that I forgot to bring up last month, naming that park and just kind of your thoughts on bringing that forward to the community might be kind of a fun engagement activity to ask for ideas and input. I think ultimately final decision would have to run up through council. But just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of a thought of just kind of putting it out there for the community to suggest names, and maybe there's a survey that goes out as well as a follow-up, or just naming the park in general.
I like the idea of involving the community in it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
See what creative powers we can
Yeah,
come up with.
yeah.
Okay. I have some information kind of ready to go once we get closer to finding when work might start. And so likely I'll put that communication out there, just kind of announcing construction and then trying to get that naming process going. Okay. Other questions, other thoughts? Wonderful. We have nothing under new business, so we are moving on to number 7, old business. Item A is the vacant commission seat. And so we interviewed applicants, January 19th. And in the memo in your packet, we recommend appointing Blake, who is here tonight. And so with a recommendation from this commission, it will go to city council for final appointment. So we just need a motion for the recommendation.
I'll motion for the recommendation.
And I'll second
Thanks for being here, Blake.
it.
So Alyssa and Sherry. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We'll be starting next month then?
Yes, he will be gone in March, but yeah, yes, as soon as it becomes official with city council this month, he'll be added into all the communication. He's getting a jump start. Sweet. So moving on, old business, B is city park planning. This is where the bulk of the information and discussion is for tonight. Trying to kind of continue as we evolve through this. So I want to go through some of the different materials that you guys were given and just kind of talk through like my thought process on how to go about this. With local government, there's different rules and laws, and there's things that I'm allowed to do, not allowed to do as a city staff. So trying to keep some of that in mind. I'm not allowed to go door knocking, and there's only certain things within my official role here that I can do. And so in your packet, you did receive some information sheets. That is information that was originally created for city council as we began discussions about this. And so I put in some of the still 3D renderings. And then after that, you have the description, cost estimates, priorities, funding source options, and a timeline. Council has given the directive that these are donation based. So that makes it hard to have a definitive timeline. We can certainly have goals or benchmarks that we're trying to achieve within that. But as of right now, the decision is that once funding is secured, then work will begin. So in order to put a timeline on that is hopefully as the year progresses, we'll have more clarity. My thought with these funding sheets, I'm going to walk you through the website over here. So the city website, on the main page, I put a tab to link you to the park fundraising page. So this is the information that's currently there. I talk a little bit about phasing, but not a lot. Because to me, while we've said that the playground and the pickleball is kind of our main priority, it's kind of our first phase, I don't necessarily want to like omit hockey from the discussion. It's a very prominent feature in the images. And so it's kind of hard to work around that. There may be a passion that exists out there for hockey and that fundraising, and that could take off as well. So again, I think clarity will come through this process in terms of phasing and timelines. But want to certainly get your guys' take on that as we kind of walk through this. So just kind of a small narrative. We have a link to the Nisswa Enrichment Fund for people to donate electronically. And then as you keep going through the page, I put an image. This is where I would link the fly-through video.
Okay.
Um,
Can I back you up a second?
Yes,
So it goes, so when you go into the tab and it goes where you want to designate your money, do you have to, and when you click on Nisswa Enrichment Fund, does it take you to the park place? You know, to the park? to donate to the
And
park
so
park?
it all umbrellas under Nisswa Enrichment Fund.
So that's just where you donate.
Yep, so that's the
Right under
general
there.
fund, and then as you keep going through it, there is a place to leave a comment.
There's also one on the first page, if I remember.
Yeah.
There's also one on the
Okay.
previous page too.
The
Okay.
bottom.
Yeah, so there's a place within the Nisswa Enrichment Fund if you wanted to indicate if you wanted to go specifically for pickleball, playground, hockey,
Or
a trail. This is for the fire department, police. That's where people can leave their comment of where it goes.
So I'm on that page right now. Is there any way that we can put, instead of like on comment? You know, that you can specify where you would like that donation to go for the park?
Yes.
Well, in this webpage or on
Yeah.
our webpage?
Well,
On our webpage, yes.
park, you know,
I would have to talk to them because they house this website.
good, okay,
So it's not for our editing.
I see.
I would have to
Okay.
communicate with them to see if that's feasible. Certainly within our page, yes. And so, I mean, this is just preliminary information that I feel comfortable putting out right now.
If you press donate now, press that once. And then if you go down on that page below the amounts, where can we designate your gift?
It has to go to that fund.
Right.
It has to go to that fund.
Yes. And then within that fund, because that's all of Nisswa.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to go to something specific, maybe it's just Parks and Rec, maybe it's Police Department, maybe it's within Parks and Rec, it's pickleball.
Right.
The next page is where you would specifically allocate or like specify the avenue you want it to be used.
And that's also outlined on our page too. If you read our page at the bottom, it says where in the very last thing,
Please note in the comment if you want it to go towards a certain project. And so I can expand on
Yeah,
that,
or highlight it or make it bigger.
bold or something.
Yeah. We want to keep track on where, you know, where the money is going to, which part of the park it's going to.
Yes, and so, the community fund will not do that. It's something that they're gonna take the donations. We will get the information and then I will have to create
Gotcha.
the Excel doc.
Okay, understand. Understand.
And track it that way. But yeah, so certainly there's room for improvement on language, expansion of language, all of that within this website. I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself. But I was like, well, if the link's live, I'm gonna put it up.
What are the other places they can donate to if they don't hit Nisswa Enrichment Fund?
there's, I mean, the Brainerd, it's.
Uh,
It's-
right.
Funds.
Yeah,
Right,
a
so
So it might
lengthy
get-
list.
Okay.
Confusing. I mean,
It might
it's a
get
lot.
confusing. Okay.
Yeah,
You go from our web page to the donate page, you'll see in there, it says Nisswa. It'll go towards Nisswa.
Okay. It automatically just,
it
So
automatically
that-
puts ours in, but if I
But-
click,
oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Right
Okay.
here, If you click on
Yeah,
that,
they're just a conduit for fundraising.
So you're hoping that
that's
people just,
all of
okay,
them.
Yep.
got it.
We just have to keep it straight as to where it's all going.
so we certainly needed people to know that it goes to the Nisswa Enrichment Fund.
Yeah, okay.
Within that, that's
So to your point.
step one.
Yeah.
From there, if you are more specific in the direction you want your money
Yep.
or gift,
I think under that, click the donate button below to contribute to the Nisswa Fund. I think that part on our webpage, that maybe we should clarify that a little bit. I
Yeah.
don't know,
It,
you know.
it
um,
needs to be stood out, yes.
Yeah,
Needs to stand
click
out.
the button now. Click the donate now button below to contribute. Make sure it's the Nisswa Enrichment Fund.
If you
And
want it to
note
go
in the
direct-
comments where you want it to go. I don't know.
Something like that.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Maggie? You're good at
we can
words.
certainly play through the words as we,
You don't want to make it confusing for somebody. So somebody, if,
I was trying to use the language that's like the
Right.
Nisswa Enrichment Fund, because that's the fund.
Right.
And then within that page, it says, like to leave a comment, not like an. Yeah, so I was trying to keep it consistent with the language.
Okay.
But yeah, if there's a way to make this stand out
I was
more,
gonna say, I think your language is good, maybe just bold it.
okay,
I don't know.
It just draws attention to it a little bit more so people have time to think about what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
certainly. And then like, is it clear when I say a certain project?
Well, if you don't list a project, how do they know?
You
I mean,
want
They're all
to go
projects.
towards a certain project.
So that, those are some of the various nuances I'm trying to sort through.
You just
right
need to be
now.
Creative.
No. when
tried to just
people
get
Actually do it.
Bulk
Yeah.
things up there. So yeah, I can work with that a little bit, and if you guys have any brilliant ideas overnight,
Yeah.
certainly just give me a shout. So just kind of a very small narrative at this time with the donate button to take you right to the link. The idea then with the image is that we will have a link to the fly through so they can watch that. And then as you go down, I'm trying to keep consistent with these images throughout the marketing.
I like that.
So the idea is that the info sheets that I put in your packet will then link to these images here.
Very cool.
So yeah, I'm into the playground. I'm gonna click my playground button.
Yep.
And then I am gonna get pulled to the playground info sheet here.
Cool.
And so that's kind of how my brain is kind of working through some of the website and tying to some of these documents. Within the documents, they all have that description. They all have kind of what it entails, the why behind why it's important, what master plan directive it's trying to achieve, the cost estimate, both like construction and professional services, why it's the priority level that it is, and then ideas for funding sources. Do you think there's other information that people are gonna wanna know, anything that could be expanded upon? Trying to kind of the what, the why, the how much. And like I said, I outline a specific timeline is kind of hard right now. I think we have goals that we want to, like, so do I want to try and put like review benchmarks, a goal, like a fundraising time
I think
frame?
you have to have something. At least like a goal timeline, right? I mean, at least somebody has, so if you're putting that out, where do you want to be in a couple months from now?
Yeah.
Just,
And then if we don't achieve that goal,
Is there a way to put something like check back for updates on timeline, or is that too?
well, and looking at it from the city business side, we begin budgeting in like July. And then, not that this is falling within the budget necessarily, but when I'm trying to starting planning the next year's work, I start in July, so that would be a good initial checkpoint to me. And then the levy, again, not that this is necessarily going on the levy. We don't know anything yet, but that gets approved in December, the final levy. So maybe some checkpoints would be like July and November.
Yeah. Like if you gave benchmark dates, because then at least at that point, like let's say you go back in July, you can say, well, we're 20% to goal, or 15% to goal. Is that what you're? Is that what
Yes.
you're thinking kind of, or?
That's like just kind of a check-in point,
Yeah,
like identified to bring information back to council and,
okay,
cause I mean, we're flowing information back and forth, trying to. We just don't have a specific timeline because council says it's donation based. So if our goal is to have all funds raised by November, that gives me clear direction on the next course of action. But if we're not there, then we're gonna have to pivot and do something else.
Plan B.
I've seen
C,
it worded as soon as 90% comes in for this, we'll have a timeline down to put it in, so. You know, yeah,
And
you'd love to be able to say, okay, we're gonna break ground May 1st of 2025. But if you only have 15% of the funds in, well then, what do? Go to the city, the council and say, hey, we need $600,000 to start this project. So yeah, you can be set down and say, we'd like to see things start at such times. Can't just, it's hard to put definite times that, yes.
what if, okay, so you have cost under there, and you have it broken up from estimated to construction cost, and then you have the engineering costs on there.
mhm.
So, and then on the bottom, I said that the design plan begins once all funding is completed. But what if you broke it down to, I'm assuming you have to have the engineer costs in there first before, once the engineer costs is in there, that's one step that you've completed. You know, then, cause that's step one, cause you can't, that's, cause you don't, you have to have that first, right?
Mhm.
The engineering first. So that might be a goal right there, once you get that 90 in.
Yeah, and there's something. Yeah. In part, you wanna make sure that you're gonna be able to build it too, cause otherwise then you're not, the engineering could be for nothing, not nothing, like, it's still our end goal, right? But an issue we ran into with the Go Lake Trail is we got so far ahead on the engineering, and then there's a time lapse on the funding, and then you have to go back to engineering, and so, I think that's something that we're mindful of now, to try and bring the engineering to the project timeline,
Time.
keeping them in. The Go Lake Trail was unique. That was 5 years.
Yes.
And so that one was a pretty significant time lapse that we don't want to see again.
We don't want to pay for things twice.
Yeah.
And
So, yes, I agree, and I think the flip side, that's the hesitation.
Yeah.
Being it's donation based, is the timeline really to create a sense of urgency? Is that, you know, I mean, or to communicate where we are, you know, I guess just what does the timeline, providing the timeline provide if we, except for a sense of urgency to try to
And
create all the funds? to gather
good
the
question.
funds?
And I don't know if there's a fear that it's just never gonna get done, or that we're gonna change gears, and
Sure.
I'm not totally sure.
Yeah,
Obviously, if people are giving a large amount of money, you wanna have some assurances on the outcome. And so, I mean, I get it from that standpoint, that lens.
Yeah.
I think especially when it comes to the playground and pickleball, like, that's the goal. And within that, we're trying to hopefully aiming high. And
Yeah.
if we need to scale it back, then,
it's kind of an if and then conversation, right? If this, then that.
I don't think there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there would be a problem of saying our goal is,
Mhm,
we're hoping to start
mhm.
pickleballs and playgrounds by this date. To get there, we need,
Yeah, like
That's
an if
right.
then.
Yeah, a goal.
the other thing too that you have to look at is if we wait too long into the year, and then Amber has to go and, the city has to go, the staff has to go and set up people coming into engineering like that. If we wait too long, sometimes their plate might be full,
Mhm.
so that can drag it out too, but that's.
People lose interest too,
Yeah, I agree.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't want this to drag on.
No.
Oh, where's my other stops? Over there. No, we don't have a committee or anything. We don't have any foundation. But when we do, so one of the other documents that I sent you guys as a supplemental, I just started trying to brainstorm. And so I did put together like this initial first year, trying to just put thoughts on paper. And so coming up here, February into early March, looking at kind of those initial newspaper releases, Facebook, fly through, getting the website kind of up and running. I am having a conversation with Pickle and Spirits about doing an event at the Pickle. Currently I'm calling it Pints for Parks.
That's always good.
And so looking at that, probably end of April, and then possibly doing a roundup sort of campaign for a couple of weeks beginning for after that event through the beginning of May, kind of fishing over Mother's Day, is what I was thinking. Specifically, I'm talking to the Pickle and Spirits, but I think there would be an opportunity to potentially, if other businesses wanted to participate, that there'd be an option to do it at that time as well. The large flyer that you guys have in front of you is requested that if we're gonna do a roundup campaign, that there's information there for people to hand out, should customers be interested. So that's where that flyer comes from. The other flyer, the small green one, we had the idea of doing a racer bag for Run for the Lakes. So if they're okay with us adding this to their racer bags, putting something in that packet, and it all kind of flows through that same time frame. But that's why there's two different, the one's just blowing up really big. And the other one would be additional information for the businesses that participate in the roundup campaign. From there brings us to about Memorial Day. I think we can have some on-site, like at the playground, some signage, whether that's the thermometer or a sandwich board or rotating both, having something on site. And then as we go continuing through the summer, that's kind of monthly Facebook updates, website updates, giving various angles on the marketing, updates on where the fund is sitting, kind of maybe to that sense of urgency. We're halfway there, like whatever that might look like, but more or less kind of a once a month timing on that. Kind of going into November, a year-end campaign, kind of that give to the max time frame, year-end push. And then I do have an open house on here that's not listed with a time frame. Looking at that coinciding with the downtown master plan that is going to be happening with the planning and zoning department. So certainly open to other ideas, additional ideas, different timeframes, but I wanted to get you guys something on paper for all the different layers and avenues and possibilities that exist that I've dreamt up so far. But yes, I will take any other thoughts.
If there are parties interested in creating a fundraising committee, what are the details to who they, like, can it be any community members or?
I think first step is if there are people to then come and approach me, and if there's multiple, we'll have to try and figure it out.
Okay,
Set some parameters
Sure.
and what that might look like.
yep. Okay,
I think within our commission here, everybody has multiple interests and avenues. And there's plenty of people within the community that would love to champion different aspects of this in their own kind of way. So I don't know if, word will spread organically like that, or if we
Yeah.
do need to have a body that works together to
sure.
carry it through.
It would be kind of fun to have the businesses be competitive and see how much money they could accumulate, and offer them a bench or a
Yeah.
placard or, something in there.
Yeah, and then and some of this, again, I don't know all the laws and the rules of what I'm allowed to do or not to do. But who doesn't love a healthy competition?
With the business angle, it may behoove us to go to Pam Chamber and
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
if they could involve too, because I think that can be worked out. Yeah, for the businesses.
So you really do need some kind of fundraising committee.
Potentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then always.
Yes.
There's only so much I can do, I will say that,
Yeah.
in my official capacity with the city.
Okay.
Other thoughts on kind of this tentative plan? I'm gonna
No.
bounce back to the website. At the very bottom right now, you got a link to the master plan that will for people who want more information on current situation and future vision. And then here's your ways to give. So you can do a cash donation. I think the thing that I need to add here is that you can drop it off at City Hall. You don't necessarily have to mail it to St. Cloud, but we can hold them here. It cannot be made out to the city of Nisswa though.
Okay.
And then obviously the online option, and then there's additional options that they're much more well versed in than me. And so I think that's where having the community fund help with these other charitable donations, is a huge asset to this fund. But it does talk about, minimum distributions and different charitable gifts and things like that. So, as of right now, the one thing that I've thought of is I just need to add that you can also bring it to City Hall. But, if this isn't clear, if there's more direction, I took this directly from the community fund. But want to make sure that it's clear for people.
And are we gonna talk about these funding tiers? Okay,
Yep.
I won't jump ahead then.
Other thoughts on this one?
No, I think it looks good.
I do
Okay.
too.
So that's kind of how I envision these different documents playing out. Going to, so you got the fundraising plan, and okay, those are our different things. You got your ways to donate. Additional thoughts here. With funding tiers, I have the current levels. So this is what's currently posted on the outside of the warming house right now.
Okay.
Out there, I don't know how they approached it, but it is primarily corporate and grants that are listed, not individuals or families. And so within kind of these funding tiers, I just kind of try to put down some thoughts that I had for considerations. Is there something different for individuals versus corporate? The visual aesthetics of what that looks like. Some places I've seen fundraising campaigns where it's like, purchase the swing set, purchase the merry-go-round, and you fundraise for that specific element and you get kind of recognized for that element. Consideration for just the aesthetics of that, and so we're not looking like a walking billboard out there and advertising plastered everywhere. For those large contributions, is there something of naming rights? We have memorial benches here. One question with those, is it forever? Is it on a 10-year cycle when the bench needs to be replaced? Just kind of what is that memorial donation program? And then I did have kind of a concept that I thought was cool that I want to show you guys this picture of. some way to represent donations, kind of in a visually, yes. And, cause right now they're just listed on a little itty bitty placard, but something that's just maybe more aesthetically
Mhm.
stimulating. So that's just one that I found. Obviously, this doesn't, not saying that that's the way that it has to go. But kind of thinking next steps, if we're gonna outline what these tiers are and what you get for it. I didn't necessarily want to do something like a paver that is hard to change out, or when it's damaged, things like that. So I thought this might be an easier way to maintain something, whether it's painted or you actually create something. Thought being with this one, it could go in the warming house building. So not saying that that's the course of action, but just trying to think of something visually appealing.
It's nice to have a visual.
And then to have a, we can list it all, but what's the plan for the recognition?
Yeah.
So kind of what does it look like?
Yep.
For these different funding tiers. Alyssa, you had a thought on this?
No, I was just gonna say, the park in my hometown, they sold like the fence posts for families. So I don't think that aesthetically works, but just,
Yeah,
thought process of how that could possibly work somewhere else.
sure.
It was interesting because it's, the kids like it too.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of ways to go about this and.
Yeah,
Not necessarily if there's any right or wrong way, but trying to figure out what's best for us and
yeah.
kind
I
of our
was-
project. And we do have a lot of unknowns, but like want to have
Yeah.
a plan for how we are going to recognize people. So I'm just trying to kind of get a thought on that one.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess when I initially looked at this, I was just curious what was up for, what people could actually put their name on,
Yes. Yes. So
What's up?
for me, I just saw the tree and I'm like, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like the giving
is
tree. It's
cool.
visually
Yeah.
stimulating. And maintenance wise, it's going to be a lot easier than like a paver or sorts where having to replace a damaged paver is going to be a lot
Yeah,
more challenging.
but if somebody came in and said, I wanted my name on the rink, we would say, yes.
Well, and so when I look at this,
You give enough money.
Yeah, I guess, I know, is it just, yeah, like,
if you go to like a bronze, silver, gold, platinum
mhm,
type ranking of things, that would cover kind of through, a good chunk of these, and then I would say probably at your 100,000 plus donations is where we start getting into something of a larger identifier,
sure,
but not knowing
yeah,
exactly what. I think there's flexibility within that.
yeah.
If you're gonna give multiple millions,
Yeah.
that's,
That's what I was wondering, or does it just stay the Nisswa City Park? I guess that was my
Right.
curiosity. Does it say Nisswa City Park? Or if somebody's willing to fork over enough money, can it be their park?
Yeah, so I think, within that, there would be dialogues with that
Got
person
it.
or
Mhm.
group of people,
Yeah,
to try and make sure that their desires are being met while
yep,
staying within the city's bounds and,
yep,
for tax purposes, they will give you a receipt for your donation at $250. If there's a thought of anything under kind of that 500 mark, maybe it's just a listing on the website versus a plaque or a name on the wall. One thought there, because if everyone's
yeah,
donating $20, your tree is full very quickly. And hopefully that, you give what you can and that's awesome.
yeah,
And every little bit's gonna make a difference. But if we're going with something on a wall of sorts, there's only so much wall space and how can we, navigate through that? I do have an email from Paula here since she was not able to attend tonight. So she did have a couple of questions for me, which I hope I've already answered, but can reiterate. She asked, what's the intended use of the city park and fundraising flyer? I mentioned it's to just support communication from the businesses, should they participate in a roundup, and then the other one is for the racer bag. She asked a question or statement. I thought we were breaking the fundraising up into phases. First phase being the playground and pickleball courts. Adding the skating rink adds a different dimension via cost and perception. Thoughts on that one? I know we did talk about that. We've talked about phasing at the council side of things. We've talked about phasing here. I think it's hard to pull out the hockey component, and if that is something that people are interested in, I don't want to say like you gotta wait, because it's not first phase. I think there's just too many unknowns right now.
It's a large project.
It's an incredibly large project. We'd have to look into it further. I don't. Probably questions are staff time, storage. Potentially.
Facility in a public space, whatever, and wedding things are possible.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. You can talk. We're free flowing. Yeah, so the question is if the boards can be removed for purposes of maybe renting out the space for a wedding or just events, car shows. Market, and I think that in general is a possibility depending on the type of board. More research to be done there, but then staff time and, storage of said boards. So, yes. Good thoughts. Does a fundraising as it's laid out, including the hockey, seem like the path we still want to go on, or try to speak to phasing differently or goals differently?
It's a big project and I don't know how you can separate it. You know, it's part of the project.
Yeah, I just feel like you're gonna end up alienating some community members if you take it out of the project too.
People want hockey. I
Yeah.
mean, they love, Minnesota is a hockky place.
And after
even though
this
it's probably-
year,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but after this year, we might have more open pockets, right? It's only 13 days of skating.
13 days.
No doubt. We're
Um,
gonna get paid back next
well,
year.
maybe I'll try and just kind of highlight some of the goals in which we're trying to achieve of the timeline, and hopefully that's kind of an avenue that can help.
That, yeah, because that's being transparent, right? I mean, cause you gotta be transparent.
Yeah. Okay, just one of our concerns is only offering online donations. She said, what about checks and CDs? That is on the website, and do need to add that you can drop checks off at City Hall here. And so if I need to highlight that anymore, let me know.
You can maybe put it just right here too, like another bullet.
Yeah,
point,
I
'cause it
think-
fits. I
Yeah,
don't-
some of that verbiage could be modified there to make it more clear, certainly. I still need to get that QR code and figure out exactly where it's going to.
Yeah.
Number 3 on hers, there's not enough information to stimulate donation response. As I've said, if you want big donations, people want more information, what cost and by when. I think with some of those tweaks, I think we're getting closer to kind of addressing those things. But certainly open to anyone else's take on it.
I feel like your presentation is very clear. The where, the what. I mean, obviously we spoke about the timeline, but other than that,
Okay.
yeah.
And then her other point was, for donation categories to add in 100 to a 500 category, smaller donations add up quickly. And we don't want to push people away because we don't have that category. So those are some of her, first glance comments. And I think we've addressed most of that tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also noted that it might take some professional expertise. If we should have it ready to go by the summer so we can get kind of the seasonal people. And then regarding pickleball, they want a guarantee on when it's going to be built. 2025 is already much longer than many people are willing to tolerate. Without some guidelines of a build, you will not get the big donations. She's receiving comments that every major city around Nisswa has pickleball and it's the fastest growing sport in America, and that Nisswa's forward-thinking image is being challenged. So those are Paula's observations. And I think it is going to be a challenge to build it by 2025 if we don't get the donations this year. I would need all the donations by the end of the year. And if we're trying to go for a grant, then that pushes, if we apply for 2025 outdoor rec grant, it pushes construction to 2026.
So if you have all the money by said date, what's the date? Then when can it be built? What's the earliest it can be built?
I would imagine things need running room based on contractors.
Yeah,
And putting it together, but if we had all the money by December, I think we would be able to hopefully expedite it. I don't know what
Yeah,
their
I'm
schedules
just
are.
saying, blue sky.
But in a perfect scenario,
Yeah,
if we had it by the end of the year, then we can, you know, get it lined up for the next construction season. It's small construction windows.
Do you have the contractors already picked out?
Nope. We have no engineering done whatsoever.
So where did you get the estimates from? then?
HKGI,
Oh, yeah, okay. Takes a long time.
and then trying to factor in inflation, going off that kind of standardized 8% professional service fees. Hopefully we're aiming high. Hopefully it allows us to determine to add in those site furnishings with the tables, the, you know, shade features, having the option of, I've said it before, I believe that black fencing is visually more appealing than chain link. Comes at a higher price point. Chain link is just fine and it serves its purpose. When it comes to the court surface, you have options between bituminous, which is going to be less expensive but more maintenance, versus post-tension concrete, which is going to be more expensive but less maintenance. So trying to aim high on these things gives us options. If we don't fundraise that money, we still have options.
Mm-hmm.
But to keep it on the high end allows us that flexibility and hopefully accommodates inflation and whatever the cost of it is at that time. And as Alyssa kind of talked about last meeting, if we don't have all the funds, then what? Do you only build 2 courts? Do we not build until we have enough for the 6? But we don't have engineering done.
And that's number one. You have
And
have
that
the
has to be done
engineering
before you can build something. And again, pickleball is going to be different than a warming house and a hockey rink.
Yeah.
So they all have unique elements about them and considerations. Other thoughts? we're moving in a relatively good direction.
Forward.
Crawling right along. Awesome. So if there's no other final comments, discussions, our next meeting is scheduled for March 7th. If we don't have anything pertinent, we won't have a meeting. But it is on the docket for March 7th. So if there's nothing else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Gary,
A motion.